Hey guys, today we have another jacket battle, this time between the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer UL versus the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer 2. That's next. Welcome to Backcountry Renegade. I'm Jeff. This channel is all about hiking, backpacking, and overlanding, and all the gear in between. If you're into those things too, consider subscribing. Today we're looking at two very popular jackets that are reiterations of the very popular Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer. We are looking at the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer UL versus the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer 2. Both these jackets are super popular. They're lightweight, compressible. It has all kinds of uses, particularly for hiking, backpacking, also alpine climbing, and all sorts of other uses in the backcountry. Let's check it out in a bit more detail. One of the most popular lines of jackets out there for backpackers and hikers has been the Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer. Now, recently, Mountain Hardwear has come out with two newer versions of the Ghost Whisperer. We have the Ghost Whisperer 2 and the Ghost Whisperer Ultralight. These jackets are very similar in many ways. However, the Ultralight version, or the UL version, is actually using thinner materials and a lot higher quality down, 1000 fill power down. And so as a result, you get a lighter jacket, but there's also pros and cons to that. The Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer 2 is the revamped edition of the ever popular Ghost Whisperer. It builds up on the previous aspects of that jacket, but also beefs it up a bit more to make it more durable and warmer. So we'll go over a bit about that. It's super packable, it's lightweight, it comes in various sizes and colors. It comes in a hooded version like you see here, or you can also get the non-hooded version. This one here, I really went with the hooded version because I like hoods on jackets now. And this color is also pretty useful. I believe it's called a forest green. And the reason I went with that is because I can even use that for hunting as a mid-layer as well. This sells new for $325, but you can often find it on sale every now and then on various sites. If the Ghost Whisperer 2 is considered ultralight, then the Ghost Whisperer UL needs to be considered uber light. It is super lightweight, and they use thinner materials and more premium fill down in this jacket to really accomplish the gram savings in this jacket while still maintaining an excellent warmth to weight ratio. Mountain Hardwear says that this Ghost Whisperer is considered to be the four-leaf clover of jackets, as it's touted as being the jacket that raises the bar as their lightest featured insulated jacket ever created. They use what they say is the best available 1000 fill power down, and as a result, this is only available for a limited time. The Ghost Whisperer UL comes in various sizes and colors, and it sells new for $375. Since these jackets are both variations of the Ghost Whisperer, you would expect to find a lot of similarities, and we do. Both these jackets are ultra lightweight and super compressible. Both these jackets also have a good warmth to weight ratios. They also have elastic cuffs. They also have a hood, and they also can serve as a mid-layer underneath the shell. Both these jackets also feature a DWR finish, and both are windproof to an extent. Now, there are a lot of differences as well that we'll consider in a bit more detail now. Let's first talk about the shell fabric. The shell fabric of the Ghost Whisperer 2 features a 10 by 10 denier Whisper ripstop nylon. This is a special nylon, the Whisper nylon, that's geared specifically for the Ghost Whisperer line. This is an ultralight 100% recyclable ripstop shell nylon with a DWR finish. Now, the previous year Ghost Whisperer, and you can see how they would come out with these two. The previous year Ghost Whisperer actually featured 10 denier and 7 denier in areas. This one is beefed up a little bit in areas that are a little bit more prone to wear. So it's 10 by 10 in denier. Now, this is one of the updates here that beefs up the durability of this jacket. So the shell fabric is pretty handy with the Ghost Whisperer 2. Now, the Ghost Whisperer Ultralight is going to be a thinner denier. The goal of this jacket in particular is to be as light as possible while still maintaining good warmth. And they do that, they cut the weight by going with a thinner denier. Now, they do this by going with 7 denier by 5 denier, so even thinner than the previous year version. This is also a ripstop Whisperer nylon as well that they used for the shell, and it's also featured with a DWR finish. Let's talk about the insulation. Now, another way in which these two jackets differ. The Mountain Hardwear Ghost Whisperer 2 features an 800 fill power insulation of down. This is a great warmth to weight ratio. Now this is actually 2.53 ounces of 800 fill down. So it's really warm. There's actually more down in this version compared to the previous generation version. So it is going to be a warmer jacket. This down is also Allied RDS certified down, which means it's actually ethically sourced down, which ensures that no birds were unnecessarily harmed and they weren't live plucked or force fed in the process. For the Ghost Whisperer 2, the down is also coated with a Q-Shield hydrophobic down, which means it allows the down to repel water to an extent if water gets to it. So it still maintain its loft, even if it's a little bit wet. Well, that's a very good thing, because one of the considerations by if you go with down, you have to make sure you're not taking it in wet or moist environments. Now, this jacket gives you a little bit extra confidence to do that, but you still want to be careful. It's not waterproof completely, but it does maintain its loft compared to untreated down. Now, the Ghost Whisperer UL actually features 1,000 fill power RDS certified down. This is the highest quality down that you can get. Now, it's good to talk about fill power. Fill power is the amount of fluff that you have with the down. The higher the fill power, the higher the fluff, which means it can maintain its warmth by using less weight of down. So if you have 800 fill, it's going to require more down to maintain the warmth compared to 1,000 fill. So you can use less down and 1,000 fill than you will with 800 fill to get similar warmth. Now, the 1,000 fill RDS certified down is what we feature in the Ghost Whisperer UL. They actually use 1.92 ounces of 1,000 fill down. It's just enough for some cool summer nights and into the shoulder season, which we'll talk about in the warmth category. Now, unlike the Ghost Whisperer 2, the Ghost Whisperer UL does not have Q-Shield hydrophobic down. So that's important to consider. So if this down did get wet, it will not be able to maintain its loft as easily as the Ghost Whisperer 2. That's something to consider, considering that the shell fabric is already really thin, 7 to 5 denier there. And as a result, it's not going to do as good of a job when it comes to shielding rain as well. So something to keep in mind. It is not Q-Shield hydrophobic down compared to the Ghost Whisperer. So in this category, with the down, while this has an awesome fill power down, the 800 fill is actually treated, so it's going to be more durable as well. So let's talk about the weight. We've already seen that the Ghost Whisperer UL actually saves weight by going with a thinner denier and also 1,000 fill power down. So as a result, overall, that's going to save in the weight. So let's talk about that. The Ghost Whisperer 2 is advertised as being 7.8 or 220.5 grams, which is the claim on the Mountain Hardwear website. And I'm guessing that must be for an extra small, because on my small version, I measured right around 8.2 ounces or so for a men's small. So it's a tad heavier than the previous year's Ghost Whisperer because it does use a little bit thicker denier in areas, but it also has a little bit more down packed into it. So it's going to be a little bit heavier than the previous year version. But compared to other jackets in the down category, this is still one of the lightest jackets available. The Ghost Whisperer UL, on the other hand, is super light. It is only 6.17 ounces or 175 grams. So for the weight, it's incredibly light and you're getting a great amount of warmth, as we'll talk about now. In terms of warmth, the Ghost Whisperer 2, as I was moving, started to feel cold for me at around 26 degrees with just wearing a t-shirt underneath. Now compare that to as I'm sitting still, I started to feel cold in the Ghost Whisperer 2 at around 31 degrees. So something to keep in mind. The Ghost Whisperer Ultralight, on the other hand, I started to feel cold while moving close to 30 degrees. So it is a thinner denier jacket, and as a result, it seemed like wind penetrated a little bit better through that, and the Ghost Whisperer 2 kind of shielded it. So as a result, even though you're having greater fill power down, it seemed a little bit colder in my book. Now, when I'm sitting still, I started to feel cold around 34, 35 degrees with the Ghost Whisperer UL. So as a result, I would consider both these jackets to be good in spring or summer late nights when it gets cool. When you start getting into the shoulder season, more into fall, you may want to start consider a thicker jacket with heavier insulation, especially in the wintertime, or you'll need to layer efficiently for that. But in terms of the warmth to weight category, these are some excellent jackets to have in your pack during that time. Let's talk about the quilting pattern or baffles here. Well, as you see, both these jackets have down baffles, and they're also thin baffles as a result. And what they do is that's actually maintaining the down from spreading throughout the jacket. Now, one thing to keep in mind is where you do have baffles, you're going to have a stitching. And where you do have stitching, you don't have any down in those areas. So as a result, the wind can penetrate through. So that's where a little bit thicker denier helps you there, because it'll actually reflect the wind outward, where the thinner denier won't do as great of a job in those cold spots. So as a result, I felt that because of the stitching pattern and there being lots of stitching and lots of baffles, the Ghost Whisperer UL, I did actually start to feel a little bit colder than the Ghost Whisperer 2 because of that. But they do have the exact same baffles. The difference there being the fabric used on the Ghost Whisperer 2 actually shields the cold wind a little bit better. Another thing I found is on both these jackets, but a little bit more so with the UL, is on some of these baffle stitchings, it would actually leak a little bit of down. So that's something to keep in mind. You will see that every now and then, and it tend to happen a little bit more on the UL version for some reason. Now let's talk about the pockets. Both these jackets feature front inner pockets here, and as you can see, the Ghost Whisperer 2, the pockets are a little bit higher up than the Ghost Whisperer UL. You actually have a little bit longer material here on the Ghost Whisperer 2. So the benefit of that is as you're wearing a hip belt, the pockets really aren't going to be as covered up on the Ghost Whisperer 2 compared to the Ghost Whisperer UL. As you can see, the Ghost Whisperer UL has a little bit smaller pockets than the Ghost Whisperer 2, and as a result, the Ghost Whisperer UL, some of the pockets will be covered, and you'll have a hard time putting your hands in your pockets while you're wearing a hip belt or even a harness. So something to keep in mind with the Ghost Whisperer UL, that is, I guess, an area where they seek to save weight, is going with smaller pockets, and they're not raised up as high compared to the Ghost Whisperer 2. Another thing to consider is both these jackets do not feature any inner pockets or anything, and as a result, it's a just minimalistic jacket. So they're meant to just do the necessary things as keeping you warm and provide the hand pockets in the front. Other than that, there's not a lot of bells and whistles or anything like you may find on some other jackets, but as a result, that's where you can save weight. All right, let's talk about the cuffs. Now, looking at these cuffs in particular, you can see a little brim which doesn't feel very elasticy. It's just kind of there on the Ghost Whisperer UL, so it's kind of wide. It doesn't shrink back or anything. Looking at the Ghost Whisperer 2, you don't have that outer little brim there, and there's no elastic inside, but you do have this little extra material here of comfort there. So as it rubs on your wrist or anything, or if you put your gloves in your pockets here, it's actually going to hold it nicely in there. Compared to the Ghost Whisperer UL, it's almost there just for feel and to show you where the end of the sleeve is, but there's no elasticity in either of these sleeves. So something to keep in mind. You could probably put your gloves over that if you wanted to prevent cold air from going in your sleeves. All right, well, let's talk about the hem draw cords. Let's look at the Ghost Whisperer 2. As you open it up, you do have one draw cord right here, and as a result, you can pull it and it'll tighten around the waist. But then you have this long little string here that you have to deal with as you tighten it. And as you do so, to get rid of that, you push the button and just kind of pull it back, and that will bring it back to its normal length. So you do have one little hem cinch cord there on the bottom to cut off any cold air from getting underneath your jacket. Now compare that to the Ghost Whisperer UL. As we open that up here, you do actually see that you do not have any kind of hem cinch cord here. So it's just a little bit of elastic here on the back end, but as a result, cold air is going to be able to get into this jacket a whole lot easier, And by doing away with that cinch cord, that was one way that they sought to save weight with the Ghost Whisper UL. All right, let's talk about weather resistance or water resistance here. Both these jackets do feature a DWR coating over their shell here, so they will be able to repel water to an extent, and they do a pretty basic, decent job there with that. But as far as the denier, we also have to keep in mind we have 10 denier versus 7/5 denier on the outer shell. So you have a whole lot less of a layer in between the weather elements and the insulation with the UL version than you do with the 2. So something to keep in mind. So if it does get wet, it's going to have a whole lot easier time getting into the down of the UL than it will the Ghost Whisper 2. And then when you consider that, the Ghost Whisper UL doesn't have that hydrophobic down that's treated. It's just basic down. So once it gets wet, it's done. It's not going to maintain its loft anymore until it dries. But the Ghost Whisper 2, on the other hand, has the 10 denier plus the hydrophobic down with the Q shield. So it's going to do a whole lot better in the weather resistant category than the UL. Another thing as far as fit, as I was using these two jackets, it does seem both a little bit tight, a little bit in the arm areas, especially when I swing my arms around side to side. And as I was doing, maybe going up and grabbing for holds and stuff, I could feel it being a little bit tight. And if I wasn't careful, if I was doing that pretty quick, or climbing or something, I feel like I might be able to rip that. And so just something to keep in mind. It tend to be a little bit tighter with the Ghost Whisper UL version than the Ghost Whisper 2, and they're both a men's small. So just something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the fit. Both these fits were very similar. They both seem a little bit more relaxed of a fit than the previous generation of the Ghost Whisper line. They seemed a little bit more boxy, especially in the waist. And as a result, it just felt like there was some material there that I didn't really need. And so it was a little bit looser than my liking. I would have really loved if these were a little bit more slim fitting. But that is what it is, probably to appeal to more people. And so more can be able to use this jacket than only the athletic fit. But that was one of my complaints. It is a little bit more boxy. Where that plays a role is when you don't have the cinch cord on the waist for the UL version, so wind can get up in that area where you can at least cinch it down in the Ghost Whisper 2 line. Overall, I wish instead of being a bit more accommodating, they could come out with maybe a trim version or athletic version in addition to the regular fit. So something to keep in mind. Let's talk about the hoods. Both these hoods are good. They both have the same kind of insulation as well, and they are pretty decent. They have this elastic around the brim to maintain its structure, but there is no cinch cord in the back to tighten it around your face. As a result, I did feel that these hoods were maybe a little bit broader or a little bit more bulkier than necessary. And as a result, you could be walking, could be running, whatever you're doing. If you're wearing your hood and facing the wind, it can easily blow off. And something just to keep in mind with the hood, but they are nice that there is a hood and it's insulated. It's just minimalistic, so just understand there's no way to tighten it as well. All right, let's talk about zippers. Both of these jackets feature the number 3 YKK zippers, and the only complaint there is they're kind of small and sometimes can be hard to use, and they're extremely delicate, so just be very careful with these zippers. On that hand, it is one way to maintain the lightweightness of both these jackets. Now let's talk about style. Both these jackets, I would say, are relatively stylish. They feature the down baffles, which are pretty cool. They also have really nice colors, various colors that you can find. But as far as style, I'd probably, if I had to pick between the two, I'd probably go with the Ghost Whisper 2. And the reason is because sometimes on this thinner denier, you can actually see through it on some of the colors, like the white or the yellow, and you can see some of the down in there. So something to just keep in mind, it can be a little bit more transparent, where the Ghost Whisper 2 seems to not be as transparent. Let's talk about compressibility. Both these jackets are highly compressible and can both compress into the right pocket in the front. So let's just go ahead and compress these here, and we'll compress first the Ghost Whisper 2. All right, so here is the Ghost Whisper 2 compressed into its inner pocket. You have your zipper on the outside. You also have this little tab here where you can hang it from a carabiner on a harness or a hip belt or anything like that. So pretty cool with that. Now the Ghost Whisperer UL also will stuff into its front pocket, but unlike the Ghost Whisperer 2, it doesn't have kind of that little tab on the inside to where you can go ahead and zip it up. So you have to be very careful because these zippers are kind of thin and the pocket is going to be smaller than the Ghost Whisperer 2, but this is highly compressible, so we'll go ahead and compress it into its pocket here. And you can see it goes in pretty nicely, but you just have to be careful with it. All right, so as you can see, it stuffs in there, and to zip it, you just kind of have to reach in and grab that little loop from the zipper here, because there isn't another one on the outside, and I guess that's an effort to save weight there. But as a result, you have to be very careful because it can be very easy to damage your zipper there. Now, as you can see, here's the differences in the stuff compression. The compression of the Ghost Whisperer Ultralight is definitely more compressible. It feels like it can even compress a little bit more here, as you can see, where the Ghost Whisperer Ultralight, it's pretty compressible as well, but just not as compressible as a 1,000 fill power jacket. Now, as you can see with the material here, you can see there is, you can kind of see through some of this. Now, this kind of orangey red actually does a good job of hiding some of that down, so it's not as transparent, but just compare that to the denier of the Ghost Whisperer 2. You can't see any of the down here, where in the Ghost Whisperer UL version over here, you can actually start to see some of the down underneath the jacket there. So concluding thoughts, who won the jacket battle for me? If I had to choose between the UL version and the Ghost Whisperer 2, I'd have to go with the Ghost Whisperer 2. And that's because the pros outweigh the cons. The first pro being that it has the Q-Shield hydrophobic down. This gives you an extra protection if you do happen to get into a brief rain shower or anything like that. You can rest assured that the down's going to maintain its loft and you can stay warm in the process. Where the UL version, while it's super lightweight, it does not have the Q-Shield and that hydrophobic down, so it will lose its loft if it does get wet. Another pro is that this jacket is going to be warmer than the UL version because you have a little bit more denier on the outside of the shell, being 10 denier versus the 7 or 5 denier on the UL version. Plus you have a little bit more down. Even though it's a little lesser quality down, it's going to be a warmer jacket, and the weight cost is very minimal compared to the durability and the warmth that you're getting with it. Another pro is that it's going to be cheaper than the UL version, about $50 cheaper to be exact, and the amount of weight savings that you're getting, but the durability and everything that you get with the 2 version, I don't think it makes much sense to pay more for getting something far less durable with very minimal weight savings at the difference with that. Another pro is that the Ghost Whisperer 2 is cheaper than the UL version, $50 cheaper to be exact, and the amount of difference that you're getting with the durability benefits and warmer jacket with that doesn't really compute with the $50 margin difference, with that being far less durable and no hydrophobic down with it. So let's consider the cons. The first con obviously is going to be a little bit heavier than the UL version, but with that, compared to other jackets in its class, it's still really lightweight in comparison to those. So super cool. So let's consider the cons. The first con of the Ghost Whisperer 2 is it has lesser quality down, being the 800 fill as opposed to the 1000 fill. The cool thing about it though is it is Q-Shield, and it is going to be warmer overall. So while you have a little bit cost in the weight, I think the pros really outweigh the cons for that. Another con about really both these jackets is they are a little bit more boxier than the original, and they do happen to have a little bit of tightness underneath the arms when you're moving, especially if you go to reach a hold or something like that if you're climbing. So they do have just a slight fit difference than the original, and I tend to prefer the original fit compared to the new updated 2 and the UL version. So what did you think of the Ghost Whisperer 2 versus the Ghost Whisperer UL? Which one won the jacket battle for you? Leave me a comment in the comments section. If you like what you saw, also give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe for more jacket battle content like this, and as always, thanks for watching.